New Book 1, From Then to Now, Part 3. I have also read their good book, what they term their Bible, and in it I found the mention of some of the things that I have been taught. I have told some people what I have learned from the real guides, and my real visions, which relate to what is written in their doctrine, but from a more realistic viewpoint, but they never seem to be interested. Most of them only want to accept what someone else has defined for them, without any real investigation and real experiences on their own. I have shared the sensibility aspect with these people, that I am relating basically the same message that their saviours and saints provided, but from the real sense of it, and not just from the literal mental documentation idea that has been pieced together to confuse people into becoming unaware followers. Life is living the real experience, and not just believing in something that sounds good. The good book is supposed to be the great truth, but the real guides told me that a lot of the meanings were removed or changed because the rulers of the earth want to control over the minds of their followers. Besides, the original people that did have real experience usually never wrote anything down. It was usually someone else that received the story second hand after the event took place. The mention of the different levels of life in the Bible is very vague, as they are termed the many mansions, and so much of the real knowledge has not been entered or altered altogether. So all that is left is the little bits of information that are so misunderstood. The old writings are mainly for people that want to feel good about something that sounds really good. This is why, when a person has been tap-lined into a gathering of those who have no real awareness, they become held to the same position that all agree to for lifetimes of unawareness. Reincarnation is mentioned in the writings, but most people do not get the idea of it, and so these people end up in the astral worlds, and then return unaware in future lifetimes. I would rather have real experience with the great reality and the sound and light that brings me the expansion of my true being. I have learned to grasp the simplicity of life from the real connection, and by doing so I can see the evidence of the true reality working in my life all the time. From what I have learned, the followers of the belief systems are only interested in the stories that sound good, and not always the actual truths that can be realized through them. The followers of these invented systems have become so used to storytelling that they think it is the way to real freedom, when in fact it is only the first step. So many of these people are more interested in some form of strange agreement than the adventurous risk of exploring the endless worlds of the great reality. As I was sitting there thinking about all this, and watching the hawk that was flying in the sky, I suddenly heard a slight rumble. I can hear things the average person doesn't. I looked around, and I could see the troop in the far distance, many miles away. Little Feather suddenly woke up, and looked round with me. Even though the sound was miles away, our hearing picked it up real fast, and I could see them moving towards us. I could hear Little Feather say, "There goes a perfectly good afternoon," as he looked in the direction of the troop. The horse also looked real fast, and then turned away and said, "Oh boy, here come the big buts." I had to hold myself back from laughing. I could sense that he was pretty bored with the drama of the ignorant soldiers. They were only a dot on the horizon, but I knew they would be here within a few hours. I didn't want to leave the shade of the trees, because one of the trees was telling me a few interesting things about what was taking place with the Indians, and I wanted to hear more. Against my will, I rode off, and out into the hot sun again. I could see Littlefeather just hanging on as I galloped along. "Couldn't we have just stayed and rested?" he asked, as he was trying to hold on. "I would have loved to do that, but we must finish out this game we are playing with the white man. Be patient. There is a change coming soon," I said, as I was considering the humour of his remark. After a while, I was with the troop again, and then rode up to the sergeant and saluted him. "Hello, sir. I spotted the tribe and where they are camped. It's about an hour or so from here," I said, trying to sound official. "Good work, Mr. Goldie," he said, with his commanding attitude. "It's been a long ride, and the sun will be down in a few hours. We'll camp here for the night. Over by those trees looks good," as he pointed to a nice shaded area. Everyone turned their horses and slowly rode to the spot. I had several good friends in the troop that I would sometimes camp with. Most of the men were younger than me, and were not the hardened core like the other soldiers who had been around a lot of years and gone through all sorts of hard and enduring situations. I usually minded my own business and let everyone have their attitudes. My parents and the real guides taught me that the unseen was the real life, and that I was to pay more attention to it than to what people thought or did on this earthly plateau. I liked listening to what nature had to say, instead of the ideas that men have, which are usually of no use, but sometimes they do give a message from the invisible side without them really knowing it. All of us settled in for the night, as we soon sat around our campfire. I rested with my friends, Jess and Riley, and of course, Littlefeather and the horse. Jess and Riley were a little younger than me, and they were both easy-going and liked to hear the stories I would tell them about my life, and even sometimes about my real visions and the real guides. These two were very flexible and fun to be with. The great outdoors can get real lonely at times, and at times it is nice to be alone, and it is also great to have good friends too. All three of us built a little fire and set up our few belongings, then sat and talked about what we were going to do when we caught the Indian. "How do you see this situation, Goldie?" asked Jez, as he watched the fire burn. "I'm a little tired of chasing Indians who are taking back their own horses. The land is still free enough, and there's plenty for everyone. But I have been shown that the time will come when what we are seeing now will be hard to find. The freedom of the range and those things that are provided are to be shared and used for the good of all, but the white people want to take everything and put it in a cage or kill it," I said, as I listened to the crackling fire. "I think I should have been an Indian too, Goldie, because I like the free range and all the beautiful things that nature has provided," said Jez, as I laughed at what he said. I had to laugh, because what he was saying seemed to warm my heart. I liked these two for how simple they can be. "You have the heart of an Indian, and that's all that matters, Jez," I said, and then we began to laugh, and so did Riley. We talked for a while, until the fire went real low, and then they went to sleep. I stayed awake and just stared up at the sky. I sat and listened to the sounds of the evening. There were a few crickets, and an occasional bird that had a slight squeak to it. I find humour in the noises that animals and birds make. This little guy was way off in the distance somewhere, probably looking for a friend. Looking up at the stars, they were like all the wonderful guides who are illuminated on the many unseen levels. I love the real side, and all the freedom that I have when I am there. Then I went right to sleep, and took a journey on my flying horse in my dream to one of my favourite places, the unseen Pacific Ocean. In my vision dreams, I like to stay by the sea shore and hear the waves roll in. The temperature is always right, never too hot nor too cold. The sun is always shining as a great ball of light in the sky. I have always known that it is the great eagle that lights all the worlds. I was taught to pay attention to my nightly visions, so that I can have the freedom to become more aware with them and travel to the other levels when the guides are ready to take me. I have come here most of my life, and I have never grown tired of the simple and wondrous beauty that it all is. The scenery is breathtaking, and so much cleaner and clearer than the earth. The wonderful colours are very brilliant, and everything has an ethereal reality to it. As I was walking through the water with my winged horse, who I call Flying Spirit, my good friend and guide came walking up from down the beach, and alongside of him was Little Feather. "Hello, Goldie," he said, with his strong voice and wonderful laughter. It was Rebazar Tars, the wonderful guide from the great reality. He is a strong-looking man, about 6 feet tall, with black hair, and wearing a black beard. He doesn't dress like an Indian, but he looks like one with the colour of his skin. He wears a type of rusty-coloured robe and sandals that look as though he got them from Mexico. We have met here most of my life, and he has taught me so much more than I can ever relate to anyone with their human mind. "Do you want to see what some of the future will bring while you are still on the dirt level?" he asked, with a big grin on his face, as Little Feather was staring at me. "Great! I am always ready to explore, so let's go, sir," I said, then jumped on my horse and waited for him to lead the way. Rebazar Tars leapt from the ground and flew up into the air like an eagle. I followed him as we both soared over the vast ocean of lighted brilliance that contained a blanket of luminous reflection from the great sun above. Little Feather stayed on the beach and watched us. "The great sea of life," said Rebazar Tars, as he pointed all about, while we sailed on the wind and flew past numerous puffy white clouds. I love to be with Rebazar. He is a real original. The great heights that we would fly were rather jittery at times, but I loved them. What a wonderful view and feeling to be here in my real awareness. We sailed far into what appeared to be outer space, past the planets and the stars. The sky was not black, but a continuous blue. After the greatest distance, there became this wondrous light that we headed into. I felt Flying Spirit move swiftly, as he followed Rebazar from the blue openness into a brilliant, whitely lit area. As we moved through the light, we soon came out the other end into a beautiful terrain that was a blanket of greenery with lovely trees and rolling hills. There were also lakes and rivers that were of the bluest colours. We gently sailed over the ground until we came near an interesting village of some kind. This village was not like the ones that I knew of on the earth. There were so many beautiful places that the people here lived in, with many different shapes and sizes. All of it looked like a place the white man would build. We soon touched the ground and walked through the strange new place. Strange to me, anyhow. We came to a clearing that was surrounded by huge trees that were of this world. There was something going on, and the bizarre Tars began to explain it to me. "Look! That is what will be taking place in the future on the earth," he said, as he was pointing to a machine that was moving on its own. It looked like a wagon with 4 wheels, and on the top sat a person who was controlling it. It also made a funny sound as it passed by us. Smoke was coming out the back end as the driver continued to circle the area. It looked a bit funny to me. "You'll someday see many of these machines on the earth. They will be the new form of transportation that will replace all the horses. What you are seeing here is where things are really invented, and then eventually become available to the Earth people. Many come in their dreams and discover the inventions of the future here," he said. I watched with a real fascination as the machine kept going. Amazing, I thought. How could anybody possibly think of such a thing? Then I began to think about where I was at. "Where are we? And what is this place called?" I asked. "We are in a different part of the second level, the astral world, and what you would call the happy hunting grounds or paradise by the belief systems. This is one of the many heavens to the white man that is labelled with so many different names, depending upon what belief systems one belongs to," said Rebazar Tars. I did notice that there were different colours of people that lived here. Everyone seemed so happy and fulfilled. "There is no killing or wars here like there is on the earth, within this area, or on this level. This is the first heaven of the earth people, and the lord of this region sometimes takes on the duties of being their god for those who come here after their earthly life is done. There are many more levels to the astral worlds that contain more light than this region, and someday I will take you there, but there is no hurry. The Indians call this place their happy hunting grounds, because all are happy to be here. A lesson to learn is that it is a lovely and wonderful area, and a person can be happy here. But happiness is something we decide, and is a part of ourselves, but this place is not the true reality. People on the earth are taught to find happiness. Again, it is a decision, not a place. You have also been here in the past, and this place has changed since then. You have been to many of the levels that are heavens in your past lives, and the experiences of them are always within you. You can learn to rediscover what you have learned at any time. Each time you go back to the earth in a new life, you take on a new body and a new mind, and the past is usually forgotten, but it is still always with you. Each lifetime you start over and try to discover the real secrets of your true being, but so much of the time you get sidetracked by what exists on the earth only. The reality of now is always present, so it is an opportunity that can only be here and now," he said as he smiled. I was trying to remember when I had been here before, during those lifetimes when I was someone else. There was something that was trying to let me know, but I wasn't sure. "When the time is right, and you need to know, you will. We must return now to your earthly body. The soldiers are waking up," said Rebazar Tars. In an instant, I was back in my earthly body and waking up. I had been to the real side with Rebazar on so many occasions since I was very young. For the most part, we would stay along the beautiful beach where the sun never sets. I was about 9 or 10 when he bought me Flying Spirit, the horse. Up until that time, he said that he was preparing me for what was to come in my future. Rebazar Tars is a very special being. He said that he is a part of a large tribe of others like himself, known as the U-Is. He and his friends are guides to the many levels that exist beyond the understanding of the people of Earth. Getting up from one of my wonderful experiences is always rather hard. I wanted to just keep sleeping, but duty called. I have learned from my dealings with most people that they are usually stubborn and set in their ways, and so I have decided to be easygoing. My 2 friends, Jez and Riley, are the same way. I've tried to tell them about the real experiences they are having, but they usually laugh at me, thinking that I am joking. I cannot prove what is taking place in my life to anyone, but they can prove it to themselves if they will take the time to learn. We were soon saddled up and ready to go to the Indian campsite. Little Feather jumped on the horse and seemed to want to sleep some more. The sergeant told us to be on guard if there was any trouble. I was hoping there would only be a small confrontation, and that would be it. It also looked to be another hot and rather dry day. The sun was up early, and the sky was very clear, not a cloud anywhere. It was always a rather unique adventure being in the great openness of the outdoors. I liked it so much better than being back at the fort and near the town that we were posted at. Then I realised there was something good about hunting for the bad guys. I could get away from the fort and be paid for it. I began to laugh at myself and wondering why I had never thought of it before. Off we rode with the rest of the troops into the Indians' campground on an adventure that was about to take place. It wasn't long before we were at the campsite of the Indians. As we rode in, everyone stopped what they were doing and just stared at us. I did not see a smiling face among them. I would have thought they would have at least noticed the cat. I was a little concerned as to what we were going to do when we did find the horse thief. Then suddenly there was a little commotion in one of the teepees up ahead. Something was going on, because the sides of the teepee were moving a bit. I looked over at the sergeant, and he was staring right at the teepee and what was taking place. We rode right up to the side of the entrance of the teepee, and everyone dismounted. The sergeant calmly and quietly told the men to surround the tent and have their guns drawn. I decided to let the men do their thing, because I was not interested in taking part. I was only here to scout, and all the confrontation would be on the part of the soldiers. I decided to ride on ahead and stay away from the action. I rode about 100 feet away, and then turned my horse to watch what would take place. The soldiers stood waiting to see who would come out. After a little more commotion, an Indian woman came out of the teepee and was startled by the troopers she saw. She quickly ran off to another teepee and went inside. I found what she did to be a little humorous. I could see that when she came out of the teepee, the men were a little nervous also. Then, after a few moments, an Indian came walking out. The witness was there, and he immediately said, "That's him! He stole the horses! That's him!" Everyone surrounded the Indian, and then a couple of the soldiers grabbed him and tied him up. He put up a real struggle, and did some yelling and screaming. He even kicked one of the men between the legs, to where he had to go and lay down. It was rather funny to see all these grown men wrestling with each other. It was almost like a game they had invented to keep themselves busy with. I just sat and watched the whole scene as it unravelled, and considered what was taking place and how everyone was involved. The horse made a comment about the scene, which I had to laugh to. I was waiting for the cat to say something, but he just stared and said nothing, as though he were bored with these people. Now that we had the man, it would be the long ride back for a trial. When the white man tried someone like this fellow, there were no Indians on the jury. Actually, there was usually no jury. With all that I had been through in the last 7 years, I could understand why my dad and all his friends left the traditional tribes because of things like this. I could see the justification of this fellow about the horses he took, but he could have saved himself a lot of trouble by just going out and getting his own on the open range. I think that some people are more bored than others so much of the time, and they want to cause trouble just to have something going on in their life. The white man has come onto the land of the Indians and made laws that restrict others, especially the Indians. They know the Indians want the horses, so they create a law that restricts them getting them and then hunts them if they do get them. A real clever idea that leads to a fate that nobody wants, but so many have decided to have. The whites have made the treaties, and they are the ones that usually break them. At times I felt so alone on a world of such cruelty and injustice. I knew that I needed these experiences to understand a real humility and compassion for all life. With my real awareness, I was able to maintain my place in this world and be detached from the events that took place like this one. I had no interest in the invented justice that was created here. I knew that life took care of its own. I cared for people, and I was willing to share what I knew with them, but most of them were too busy creating situations they had to deal with, so they never really had the time to listen or learn to what has real value.